The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The head-to-head has been weighed. Common sense prevails, and the Miami Hurricanes are in the college football playoff.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes.
We know who Miami's going to face in the opening round. Texas A&M Aggies. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how and why Miami ultimately got in, despite the odds literally being against the Hurricanes. Notre Dame had at one point this morning minus 3,000 odds to get into the playoff. I guess it goes to show you, the odds makers don't actually know. They suspect, they know which way the money is going, but they didn't have a fly on the wall. They didn't have a spy in the room, because ultimately, folks, and this is honestly the shocking thing about it, I thought, if anything, based on the way the odds and the dialogue was going here on Sunday morning, that Notre Dame and Miami would probably both get in, and that maybe they would actually penalize Alabama for getting steamrolled in the SEC championship game. 28-7 loss to Georgia. They had negative 3 yards of rushing, Bama, but the committee decided they didn't want to violate the sanctity of the SEC championship game. So not only did Alabama not drop out of the CFP, Bama didn't drop a spot. So when I was watching that live reveal and my heart was racing, they start to go through the field, and everything was pretty much chalk for the first 8 spots, right? I mean, no surprise. Indiana, number 1, Ohio State, number 2, after they just played head-to-head last night, UGA 3, Texas Tech 4, Oregon 5, Ole Miss at 6, so that no penalty for their head coach leaving. Texas A&M at number 7, Oklahoma 8, and then you get into the drama, right? 9 through 12 was the part that everyone was freaking out about. And when they put the Crimson Tide at number 9, I thought Miami's goose was cooked. I thought that was it right there. That if Alabama was going to be number 9, that they were going to leave Notre Dame at 10, and Miami, who needed to be top 10, were going to be on the outside looking in. That's how I thought that was going to play out in the moment. That's how I thought it was going to happen, okay? Because we had heard Heather Dinich, ESPN college football playoff reporter, had reiterated it this morning before the reveal that, you know what, in all the talks the committee had, they were really measuring Notre Dame against Bama. They weren't really weighing Notre Dame against Miami despite all the head-to-head and common opponent factors. But you know what, folks? They did. They did weigh the head-to-head, and that's ultimately what it came down to. And my original temptation was to start this live episode immediately after the field and Miami's ranking was released, but I decided to hold off for about an extra 15 minutes because I wanted to listen to Hunter Yurachek, the committee chair, speak, which happened about 15 minutes after they revealed the rankings. I wanted to hear his explanation for why they ultimately bumped Miami in front of Notre Dame. Now, the process of actually getting to that point was incredibly chaotic, incredibly messy, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, why for 5 consecutive weeks, when Miami had that head-to-head win against Notre Dame the entire time, that happened back on week 1. So why for 5 consecutive weeks was Notre Dame always ranked in front of Miami, and why did they finally decide to weigh the head-to-head at the end when ignoring it throughout previous parts of the process? And what Yurachek said today, for the first time, his words were consistent for 2 consecutive weeks. Because you remember something, last Tuesday night, when the penultimate rankings were put out, the second to last, for those who don't have the 7th grade vocabulary like I do, when the Tuesday rankings came out and BYU was between Notre Dame and Miami, Juracek had said, you know what, it'd be a lot easier to weigh that Miami head-to-head against Notre Dame if there was nobody in between them. That if they were ranked back-to-back, then we might have to take a look at, hey, when they actually played on grass, not on paper, who beat the other team? And that's exactly what happened. So Juracek clarified it. He was speaking to Reese Davis at the end of that reveal show. And he said that, with BYU, who was 11th last week, they got smoked by Texas Tech. And they, it's funny how BYU gets dropped for losing a conference championship game. Alabama doesn't move. So that the hypocrisy knows no bounds. But he did say because, BYU got smoked, BYU dropped behind Miami, and then lo and behold, there was no longer a buffer. You had Notre Dame, you had Miami, so they needed to have that direct comparison. And then Juracek said it. And by the way, all the analytics experts in South Bend who were like, well, yeah, you may have technically beat us on August 31st, but it was in the summer, so it doesn't count. And our strength of record and our FPI and our SP plus is slightly higher than yours. And those analytics matter more than the head-to-head win. Juracek said the opposite. He said, you know what? All the analytics between Miami and Notre Dame were very similar at the end of the day. So once those teams were ranked back-to-back, the committee felt that they were compelled to value the head-to-head and ultimately put Miami in front of Notre Dame. And so, let me say this loud and clear, okay? With Miami getting in and Notre Dame not getting in, I know I've made a lot of enemies in the Midwest over the past several weeks because, Miami and Notre Dame people, we've been at each other's throats. We've been arguing. We've been calling each other names on social media. I mean, I try not to call people names. People have called me names. We've been at each other's throats for the past several weeks. But ultimately, with Miami getting in and Notre Dame not, I will say this. Of course, the thing that we all, Miami fans wanted most was to get into the field, which just happened. But I will say, I, honest to God, feel that Notre Dame is more deserving than the Alabama Crimson Tide. And that if you really want to go by the committee's principles, right, when it comes to, eye test, when it comes to, performances, like Alabama, they haven't played good football for the past month. I mean, that team just got steamrolled the other night. They had a narrow escape against, they lost to Oklahoma. They had a narrow escape in one of their other victories, just barely beat Auburn 27-20. Auburn's a 5-7 team. Like, I really feel for what it's worth that it should be Miami and Notre Dame in, not Alabama and Miami in. But predictably, the CFP committee decided that they wanted to protect the sanctity of the SEC championship game, that they didn't want to set the precedent of penalizing the loser of the SEC championship game by knocking them out of the playoffs. We all know the SEC has a lot of lobbying power with ESPN, who's got leverage against the College Football Playoff Committee because that's the TV partner. And I'm sure Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, was reading everybody the Riot Act over the past 24 hours that you do not want to punish the runner-up of the conference championship because then you render the conference championship games meaningless. So you knew no matter how these last three spots were going to shake out, somebody was going to feel screwed, right? If Alabama had been dropped out, I think that would have been the most justified team to drop out. But, of course, all the SEC heads would have felt like Alabama was unfairly penalized for a bonus game, right? How come Oklahoma gets in when they were sitting at home and Alabama gets punished for the SEC championship game? They would have felt screwed. Obviously, had Miami been dropped out, we would have all felt screwed. In fact, just to take you guys behind the curtain, when I was preparing to do a show today, because whether it was good or bad or ugly, we were going to do a reaction show here on Locked On Canes. And thankfully, Miami is headed to the college football playoff. Again, to reiterate, the Hurricanes were given that final at-large, the 10 seed. Miami is in. Notre Dame, who lost the head-to-head to Miami, had an equal 10-2 record with Miami, 4 common opponents that both teams all beat, but Miami beat 3 out of the 4 by a wider margin than Notre Dame did. So I feel the committee got this right. But I was bracing myself for the possibility that the committee would not get this right. So when I was preparing my notes and my materials to do a show today, I had notes written up for the bad scenario just in case. And this would, thankfully, this is an alternate universe where this does not come into play. But that was going to be my episode thumbnail on YouTube had Miami been left out. Miami screw job would have been what we went with. Instead, Miami and the CFP is what we're rolling with here. So let's talk a little bit more about why Miami is in, why Miami deserves to be in. And again, ultimately, despite the fact that the committee was chaotic throughout the process, how come they had Miami and Notre Dame separated, Miami behind Notre Dame all along until the final week? Finally, there was no buffer.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more, and keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
And just like that, Notre Dame's 2025 football season is over.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I'm still in a state of disbelief that the 2025 Notre Dame football season is just over. Obviously, we knew going into the weekend that Notre Dame could get left out of the playoff, but as I said on Friday's Mailbag Show, I believed that if BYU lost to Texas Tech and Alabama got blown out by Georgia, then Notre Dame would be comfortably in the playoff. I thought they could even move up to number 9. Alabama would drop to 10 if this were to happen. And on Saturday, I was feeling good. Like, that's exactly what ended up happening, and yet the committee still pulled the rug out from underneath the Irish at the last possible second. So here we are. I actually just got home after a 6-hour flight from New York City to Los Angeles. And if I look exhausted and maybe even a little bit depressed tonight, that's because I am. This is one of those shows where I don't really have that many notes. I think it's better if I just gave my raw reaction to everything in the moment. And I apologize if I don't have the same energy as I normally do. Like, I could come on here and yell and scream about everything that happened to Notre Dame, but that's just not how I'm processing it right now. Maybe that's going to happen later on in the week as we go through the grieving process, for lack of a better term. But for now, I'm just so bummed that the season is over. I'm really frustrated with the entire process, and it really felt like we were just getting started with this team and had a lot of exciting things in front of us to be excited for, more meaningful football with this team that we've all really grown to love. But we're going to try to get through this together. It does feel like Notre Dame and really the entire fan base is backed into a corner right now. I think the team got screwed by the committee. I'll explain why. We're also going to talk about why the backlash to Notre Dame's decision to opt out of the bowl game is ridiculous. And we'll also get into what comes next for this program, because I truly believe this is a major inflection point, not just for Notre Dame, but for college football as a whole. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in live. I'm getting all kinds of people in the chat today. And look, I know emotions are running high for everyone right now, and I'm certainly one of those people. But, you know, when we look at this situation in totality, I think we have to be honest with ourselves here. By losing the first 2 and biggest games of the season, Notre Dame relinquished control of their own destiny. It was always going to come down to a decision by the committee to put them in the playoff, and that's a dangerous place to be, because as we've seen from what's now been 12 years of the College Football Playoff Committee, you never know what they're going to do. More often than not, they're just going to do whatever the hell they want. There might not be any logic behind it, or maybe their reasons are actually a lot more corrupt and don't come from a place of good faith. But look, when you lose 2 games to start out the year, and those are your 2 biggest opportunities to really showcase yourself, that is the position that Notre Dame put themselves in. But the team did everything that they possibly could from that point on by winning 10 straight, all by double digits. They are clearly one of the best teams in the country. You look at any available metric that the committee uses, by the way, and Notre Dame is not just a top 10 team, they're a top 5 team. But when you're banking on the committee to make the right decision in a very flawed system, this was always going to be a possibility. But the way that this committee went about it, from the rankings and the talking points week to week, and then flipping Notre Dame after a bye, like, it's even worse than I could have ever imagined. And then when you look at the structure of the system as a whole, you've got 2 group of 5 teams getting in the playoff, but Notre Dame's not in. A team like Vanderbilt's not in. But we're going to deal with the first round game, or first round slate of games, I should say, that's going to feature 2 blowouts that no one's going to want to watch. And then you're going to have a rematch with Alabama and Oklahoma that was one of the least fun football games I've ever had the experience of watching. And then, you do get one interesting game with Miami and Texas A&M, and that one is going to be extremely difficult to watch if you're a Notre Dame fan. I don't know how I'm going to even watch the first round of the college football playoff. I might not, to be honest, because it's just going to make me all the more frustrated. And I think the most egregious thing in all of this, of all the things involved here, the fact that the committee did not drop Alabama after they got blown off the field by Georgia is truly indefensible. It made no sense. And when I was talking about how I felt like Notre Dame was going to get in the playoff in the mailbag on Friday, I said, if the committee wants to have any credibility, they're going to have to apply the same penalty or the same idea as to how they rank BYU and Alabama if they both end up losing. Because if they don't want to punish them for losing in the conference championship, then okay, they should both stay exactly where they're at. BYU should be 11, and then Alabama should be at 9, and then Notre Dame's in at 10. But if they drop one, they've got to drop them both, especially if they both get blown out. And BYU got ran off the field in Texas by Texas Tech, and then Alabama had -3 rushing yards against Georgia. And they've just not looked like a good team for over a month now. But for whatever reason, the committee decided to drop BYU, but keep Alabama exactly where they are. And I think we can point to a lot of different reasons why, but there's also another layer in all of this. It's the ACC. And I think that their ridiculous tiebreaker situation is a big reason why we're in this position. Because if they had just put Miami in the conference championship game, they were going to win that game because Miami was the best team in that conference. And to be clear, I think Notre Dame and Miami should both be in the playoff. This isn't a Notre Dame versus Miami debate. I have no issue with Miami being in. I think Miami's a better team than Alabama. I don't think Alabama should be in the playoff. They haven't looked like a good team since they beat Georgia, really, back in September. They squeaked by Auburn. They lost at home against Oklahoma. They got destroyed by Georgia. So it's ironic that a few years ago, when the committee decided to put Alabama in instead of Florida State in the 4-team playoff after Florida State had just finished an undefeated regular season, they won the conference championship, but they put in Alabama, who had one loss, and the thinking was, well, they were putting in the best team at that point in time. And Alabama had been playing better because Florida State lost their starting quarterback. So why is it that the same logic is not applied now? Because there is not one rational person who could watch that SEC championship game on Saturday night and say Alabama looks like a playoff team. They haven't looked like a playoff team in weeks. But we knew that this could happen on Tuesday night when the committee decided to move Alabama up for no reason. They said it was because they were impressed by their win over Auburn, but then Yurchek, the CFP committee chairman, started to dive into some of the details there, and you're like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. Just the fact that they went up 17-0, that is what impressed you enough. And then after that, he said that the real debate in the committee room was between Notre Dame and Alabama, and they weren't even really talking about Notre Dame and Miami that much, but then he left the door open by saying that if Miami and Notre Dame were side by side, all of a sudden they would look at head-to-head differently than they have in the past. Again, none of that makes sense. And the real reason, as we discussed on the show, is because they were being proactive. They were trying to avoid a situation where if Bama lost, but BYU won, and Alabama was ranked at 10, then BYU would jump Alabama, and then the team who finished, runner-up in the SEC would get left out of the playoff. That is clearly SEC bias. Any person who can look at that objectively can recognize, wait a second, Alabama had no business moving up to 9, and they certainly didn't have any business staying at number 9 after they lost by 21 points to Georgia, and all of a sudden their best win of the season doesn't really look that good. And yeah, it was impressive at the time when Alabama went into Athens and they knocked off the Bulldogs. That was a really good win. Alabama was playing really good football, but they haven't played good football in a really long time. So the fact that the committee decided to keep Alabama at 9 when it was already kind of mysterious why they even moved them up to begin with is ridiculous. And I think it has to do with a bunch of different things, whether it's like ESPN, SEC, you've got that, but then there's also the ACC piece to it where Virginia ends up losing in the ACC Conference Championship game to Duke, who finished 7-5 in the regular season, and Duke had no chance of making the playoffs, even though they won the conference because they had 5 losses and they weren't going to be ranked ahead of Tulane and JMU. And I wonder how much that impacted Notre Dame's playoff chances there, because they'll never say it publicly. The committee, they're never going to admit that they felt obligated to put in Miami in the college football playoff, because otherwise there would not be an ACC team in the playoff. Like, you can't say that out loud, but we all know that these are people. They have their affiliations, they have their partnerships, they have their bias, all of that stuff. So all of a sudden they're looking at a situation now where a Power 4 conference might be left out of the 12-team playoff. So they might have put in Miami there at number 10. And as I've said multiple times on the show, in this episode and previous episodes, this is not a Notre Dame versus Miami debate. Miami deserved to be in there. No problem with them making the playoff, but Notre Dame deserved to be in there as well. And I don't think Alabama deserved to. And at this point, it's like, well, what is the point of these conference championship games? Like, how is BYU getting punished, but Alabama's not? Like, what's the difference there? Obviously, I think we can all realize that it's, well, one is the Big 12 and one is the SEC. And this idea that a team who loses their conference championship game could be left out would be unprecedented. That's not true. As a matter of fact, Alabama, when they made the playoff over Florida State that year in the 14 playoff, they beat Georgia, who had been undefeated in the regular season up to that point. Because Georgia lost that game, they were left out of the playoff in favor of Alabama. So, look, I'm just asking for them to apply the same logic to all teams, but it's clear that they're just making it up as they go. And unfortunately, when you just make it up as you go and you're dealing with this and you're in Notre Dame, you're relying on these people to make the right decision. You can't trust them. And I think, after the season, there's going to have to be a lot of conversations about what is the point of the college football playoff, because I thought it was to get the 12 best teams in. And right now you've got 2 teams in because they won their conference championship that are going to have a chance to compete for a national championship. And it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense for the committee and ESPN, like the television partners either. Because, like, let's just go through this first round slate of games. Which one of these, like, gets you excited? James Madison, Oregon, that's going to be a blowout. Tulane, Ole Miss. Ole Miss already beat Tulane 45-10 at the start of this year. Miami, Texas A&M will be exciting. Then you've got a rematch between Alabama and Oklahoma. So there's just really nothing to get excited about there. And I think they put themselves in a difficult positions, because I don't think you could look at that and say, well, the 12 best teams in college football get a chance. I understand these are the rules. This is the system that's put in place. But is this a good system? Is this the best that college football can offer? That we're dealing with the committee just making up things on the fly, and it's a television show? Like Pete Bavacqua, the Notre Dame athletic director, put it right. He's like, what's the point of these week-to-week rankings? It's just manufactured drama for no reason. And I understand that ESPN is going to continue to do that show because it makes them a lot of money. People are going to tune in no matter what. But it created a really unfortunate situation for Notre Dame, because they had been in the playoff field from the beginning. They did everything that they were supposed to do from that point on. They blew out every single team that they faced. And yet here they are getting boxed out because the committee just changed their mind at the very end. So it just doesn't make any sense. And I feel awful for all the players on the team that they aren't going to be able to get this opportunity. I think, look, I'm 29 years old, and I think this is probably Notre Dame's best chance at winning a national championship since I've been alive, which seems a little bit crazy, but you think about how well this team has been playing as of late, the talent on the roster, the fact that they have Jeremiah Love healthy going into the college football playoff, the fact that the defense has been much improved. They're going to get they would have gotten Billy Strouth back and Gabriel Rubio back from injuries. And then you look at the rest of the field, like, there is no super team this year. Ohio State looked like the clear favorite all season long, and then they lost to Indiana. Indiana looks like a really good team, and there was a chance where we could get a rematch between Notre Dame and Indiana in the second round, which I'm sure everyone would have loved to see, especially in the Rose Bowl. But unfortunately, we're not going to get that opportunity. And it's really unfortunate, because look, like, It's really hard to win a national championship. Teams like this, opportunities like this don't come around often. And as I said from the beginning, Notre Dame put themselves in a position by losing their first 2 games. It's not all the committee's fault. Notre Dame is responsible for this as well. But from that point on, they did everything in their power to prove that they're a top team. They proved it. The committee recognized that for over a month, and then they decided to change their mind at the last possible second for reasons unknown. I know what Hunter Yurachek said when he was asked by Reese Davis. I was really frustrated that Reese Davis did not ask him specifically about Notre Dame and Miami because everything was all about Notre Dame and Miami. But when Yurachek is saying all last week the debate is between Notre Dame and Alabama, and then for Alabama to go out there, get throttled, and now all of a sudden there's an even bigger gap between them and Notre Dame, none of it makes sense to me.
Jordan Love threw 3 touchdown passes, and Keyshawn Nixon sealed the deal as the Green Bay Packers move into first place in the NFC North.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
It was the offense that won the Green Bay Packers this football game. They scored 28 points. It certainly could have been even more, 6.5 yards per play for this offense, and they were hunting explosives from the very first play, the very first drive. They thought, they being the Packers, thought they could go up and down the field on this Bears team. And had things gone just a little different here or there, they could have. They still scored 28 points in this game. They scored 14 in the first half, 14 in the second half. Right on pace. And when this offense needed the juice, when they needed to make their plays, they did. The turning point in this game to me, not to preempt the squad show we're going to do later, came in the late second quarter. And I'm wondering why Matt LaFleur is not calling timeout late in the half. They run the ball on first down. They throw a short pass on second down. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. And then they take their shot. And Jordan Love hits Bo Melton for a touchdown that puts you up 14-3. Now, I understand the Bears come back. They do all the things that they need to do. 3rd and short. Packers catch cover 1 with a heavy blitz look, and they have the perfect play call. The perfect play call. Just a little inside slant. Not that there's an outside slant. They catch a little slant from Christian Watson, and Watson takes it to the house. It was the answer that Green Bay needed as the Bears start to make their push. And Caleb Williams, trust me, we're going to talk about the defense, but Caleb Williams makes a couple of incredible plays in the second half. And that's just like in the NFL, you're going to run up against a team where they can make some plays. But the Packers able to answer in every situation where they absolutely had to answer. And the final drive is the perfect encapsulation of that, because the Bears are coming off what our pal Coach Jags likes to call an IV drive, where it was, I think it was 17 plays, and you're 17 plays, 83 yards. They convert 5 third downs. The Packers come back 8 plays, 65 yards in 4.5 minutes. And they leave some time on the clock for the Bears, but like they've got to score on that drive. What do you want them to do? They go right down the field like a hot knife through butter, and they get what turns out to be the game-winning touchdown. This offense against that defense, as I said all week, is a mismatch. I really botched that by screwing up the pronunciation of mismatch. But we are live on YouTube, so it stays. It stays just like this Packers defense. But to me, this game was won by the offense. And if the Packers are going to win again in Chicago in 2 weeks, it's going to be this offense that does the job. Because Bears fans got mad at me for saying it. But it was true when I said it. It was true on Sunday, and it's true right now. This is not a good Bears defense. If you don't turn the ball over, they cannot stop you. 6.5 yards per play, by the way, would lead the NFL right now. Like, that is elite offense. And the Packers really, if it weren't for the one Jordan Love interception, and it started with a sack and then the interception, if that doesn't happen, this game might not even come down to the final plays that it came down to, where ultimately Green Bay makes the plays that they need to make. But you look at the underlying numbers here. I mean, 6.5 yards per play versus 4.6 yards per play. 220 yards passing versus 177. In the red zone, the Bears go 2 for 4. That's the game. The Packers go 1 for 1. They create explosive plays in this game. Both teams turned the ball over. By the way, it could have been more than one turnover. We'll get to the penalties part of this, because the penalties, the officiating, oh my God. Oh my God. The officiating was a nightmare. What a nightmare. What a nightmare from this officiating crew. But Jordan Love, really outside of one throw, Jordan Love was spectacular in this game. The one throw on 3rd and long, you're trying to hit Matthew Golden up the seam, and he just short arms it. Like, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is right there in the middle of the play. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if the ball is cold and he wasn't able to layer it quite the way that he wanted. It goes right to the defender. Matthew Golden's open. If he can layer that ball, just throw it up a little bit higher. Just change the trajectory just a little bit. That ball goes exactly where you want it to go. Other than that, I thought Jordan Love was outstanding in this game. The offense overall was outstanding in this game. I understand 337 total yards. You're going to go, that's not very much. But 9 drives, that's 6.5 yards per play. That's really getting the job done. If you had 10, 11, 12 yards, this team would have had 400 yards of offense. They had over 200 at halftime. It was the defense that couldn't quite collect themselves in the moments where they could have taken down Caleb Williams, or where they couldn't quite, like Keyshawn Nixon comes a fingernail away from stopping a touchdown. If his hands were like, Kevin Durant's toes longer, right? KD, the famous missed 3 a couple years ago. Okay, you remember, maybe you don't. Look it up. This Packers team, I felt like for most of the game, really controlled the game. And it took out of structure plays. It took craziness for the Bears to even be in it late. It really did. I mean, Caleb Williams, and look, credit to Caleb Williams. He made some great plays. But it took Caleb Williams making some otherworldly throws just for this game to be close. And that's because the Packers offense did everything it needed to do in this game, aside from not turn the ball over. If Jordan Love just throws that ball over the defender and it gets picked off, like it's same outcome, interception. It's a 30-yard difference. Now, it's not like the Bears were able to get points off that, so it didn't matter ultimately, but it felt like if the Packers could have gotten points on that drive, a drive that they controlled, where Jordan Love is pinpoint, putting the ball wherever he wants, it didn't really matter. The Packers never really felt threatened in this game, because even when they got the ball with the tie game, they go right down and score. Like they were really in, and I said this on Thursday, I said this on Friday. I said this is going to be the kind of game where what happens is the Packers control it all the way, but the score doesn't ultimately reflect it, because that's just the kind of season the Bears are having. And that's true. And at 14-3, I thought, okay, well, maybe it turns out that the kind of season that the Bears are having is going to catch up with them here. And then the Bears come back and they play well. Like they deserve some credit for the way that they fought back in this game. Caleb Williams deserves some credit for the way that he fought back in this game. Ben Johnson I thought, called a really good game. Like, there's nothing I can say about like, oh, the coaching, whatever. But ultimately, the Packers won this game because they have Jordan Love and the Bears have Caleb Williams. And Jordan Love was just much better than Caleb Williams in this game, even for some of the great plays that Caleb Williams made. Caleb Williams, like, you go back and you look at it, in the first half, he's 6 of 14 in this game for 32 yards. The 71 yards in the first half was the fewest yards any Ben Johnson offense that he called has ever had. 2.5 yards per play. They end with under 4.5 yards per play. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more, and keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Your Kansas City Chiefs are in unfamiliar territory as they sit at 6-7, headed into the final 4 games of the season.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Man, I don't even know where to begin with what comes next because this is uncharted territory for this Chiefs team. And how do you go forward at this point? I mean, you look at how this game played out. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes has 3 interceptions. How many of those are really on him? Which is a storyline we've had multiple times this season.
Right.
And I actually said this on the squad show. In a way, it's kind of funny is not the right word. It's ironic maybe that Travis Kelce started this run against the Philadelphia Eagles way back when and kind of almost ended it too.
Kind of, except there's 4 more games. Here's the thing, folks. Nothing's over. There will be tomorrow. There will be next week. And yes, you have to go back, and there's only a 10%-ish chance that you make the playoffs. So what do? You become like you were before Patrick Mahomes showed up, where you were a 500 team every year striving to get a couple more W's to get into the postseason. Then you take a step back and you retool and you enjoy the extra month of rest that this team hasn't had in 5 seasons. And you take what you can from that to rebuild and restructure the way you go about things for next season.
Yeah, and next season is going to be a big question. And you and I have talked about this for the past couple of weeks. Is it a possibility that this is just the longevity of how long this run has been? The fact that they've been playing 19, 20-game seasons for the entirety of pretty much Patrick Mahomes' career, has that finally started to catch up to this team? One of the other things that I think that makes this interesting talking about this on the squad show was it also kind of, when you look back at what they've been doing for the past 6 years, they've been playing football basically till February. Mm-hmm. When you do that, you basically lose most of your chances of getting candidates that you maybe want for your coaching staff. And I think that there's a lot of coaching staff changes that could be coming because of the way that this team has been playing. But you look at how this game turned out, and it comes down to your players not making plays. Patrick Mahomes did okay at times, but Travis Kelce dropping a ball, Noah Gray dropped 2, Rashee Rice had one hit him in the hands. Kareem Hunt, I will say that ball probably a little bit inside and not where Mahomes would want it, but that's still a ball that you need to catch in that situation.
Yeah.
Just too many things that went the wrong way and bounced the wrong way, which is exactly, well, and Butker's kick as well. It bounced the wrong way. What has happened to this team this season? That has happened almost every single game. It seems like something has bounced the wrong direction.
It has. And we're going to talk about what the failures are and some of the standouts later in the show. But what comes next is what we're talking about here. And we have to be specific that those things still have to be fixed. This isn't the end of the year. We didn't just see the season finale, right? There's still a quarter of the season left, and you got to still figure things out. And there's a number of things. The fact that this defense looked like it should have looked like all season long is on you, Steve Spagnuolo, and it's on you, Chris Jones. The fact that you had to rally to get to this point is a problem. It should have been this every single damn week. That is the issue at large. And I think it's a good stepping stone because I thought you saw some things that if they are able to rekindle that and recircle it, if this defense can play like that, they have a chance to go win a few more games. And there is that slight chance of still making it in if everything else unwinds like the Indianapolis Colts. There's still some mathematical things to do.
Yeah, that was a huge loss for the Colts, with not only just the loss of the game, but also losing Daniel Jones for the season. Changes the playoffs completely. The one thing I will say, you lose against the Chargers, which is your next game, you're done. The season's over. Then you still have 3 more games you still have to play, but
Right.
then you start thinking, okay, do we maybe have Worthy have his surgery now? Do you not have him continue playing if you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs? Why would you continue to have him go? Like, there are some things that I think that you consider. You get some guys, some younger guys, some reps. You don't have any chance that Josh Simmons is coming back because there's no reason at that point. But let's go back to let's talk about that for a second. When you start talking about what comes next for this offensive line? You lose Wanya Morris the first snap of the game. And I'm sitting there going, well, there goes that game. And Isapole comes in and plays phenomenal pretty much the entire game. Not saying he pitched a shutout and was perfect, but for the situation he was put in and for that being his first NFL game, he played very well for a undrafted rookie.
Yeah, he's one of the standouts we're going to talk about
sure.
later in the show while we wrap up what we're right in front of us. How do they take what they did and make it repeatable in any way, shape, or form? Because the special teams turned some things around tonight, right? I felt the intensity was there on special teams for the first time in a very long time. Like, that has to repeat next week and the week after that and the week after that. They continued to run the ball well. There were some terrible decisions. That's coming up in a bit as well. But the ability to run the ball was still there. And I think that's another thing that has to come next and over for the duration of the season, no matter who's at quarterback or left tackle or right guard.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more, and keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The Pittsburgh Steelers get a big win in a way where they hit the Ravens where they weren't looking, and they give themselves some hope.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
I'm wearing the bag of shame because I, Chris Carter, picked against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game where they won, and they won in convincing fashion. A bet I once made with a fan. I now take this off because Steelers fans, it is a victory Monday for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They walked into Baltimore and beat them in their house 27-22 with big plays and big contributions from several people across the board. It is a huge win for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They advance to 7-6, reclaim first place in the division, bumping the Ravens down to 6-7. And with the Bengals losing, they're in an interesting spot in the AFC North the rest of the way. But we'll get to the division outlook later. We got to talk about this win, and where I have to say, Aaron Rodgers can tell me to shut the heck up in the next press conference. I kind of feel bad that I wasn't there in Baltimore to be able to give him the opportunity to tell me to shut the heck up, because I was on Aaron this week. I've been on Aaron in recent weeks about the deep passing game, why it wasn't there, what's not working, and he's been very patient. And you guys have seen he's kind of giving me some like, tough back and forths here and there, pushing back on my questions, and that's what he's supposed to do, man. He's an athlete. And as a reporter, I'm trying to, learn more. I'm trying to see more. I'm trying to, say, hey, what about this? What about that? I'm trying to ask the harder questions. And man, did he deliver in this one. Aaron Rodgers, 23 of 34 for 284 passing yards, a touchdown pass, a rushing touchdown, 103.1 passer rating. He was every bit of Aaron Rodgers in this game, the smart Aaron Rodgers that took what was there. And what was there, sometimes taking what was there isn't the check down. Sometimes taking what's there is getting the ball deep, and that's where the Ravens went. And I wrote about this for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go read this. It's my latest Carter's Critiques column. It should be up. It should be like on their front of their sports page right now if you're watching or listening to this early Monday. But I really believe the Ravens came into this game with the same sort of game plan style that they did the last two times they played the Steelers. If you remember, when we talked about this last week, Zach Orr, the Ravens defensive coordinator, was on Hard Knocks last year talking about Russell Wilson, saying, hey man, he's 3-pointers and he's layups. He can't hit the intermediate. So let's make a game plan. Don't worry about the intermediate. Take away these things, and then we have a game plan. It is without a doubt in my mind, the Ravens sat similarly this year and said, look, guys, they are one of the best short passing offenses in the NFL. By the way, they are. I looked this up on Sports Information Systems. They had, coming into this week, 6.2 net yards per attempt, an adjusted net yards per attempt. That's per Sports Information System. That's a formula that they have that kind of like judges like touchdowns, sacks, turnovers, along with yards per attempt. And on passes that traveled 10 yards or less, the Steelers are the most efficient offense at moving the ball in those instances. And so the Ravens undoubtedly came up with a game plan that said, hey, we're going to take that away. We're going to take the run away, and we're going to challenge. We're going to say, hey, you know what? Like last year, we didn't think they could hit the intermediate pass. We're going to say this year they can't hit the deep ball because they hadn't done it for 4 straight games. And the very first play of the game, 52-yard bomb to DK Metcalf. Things break wide open. Aaron Rodgers hit 4 deep balls in this game. I have to go back and I have to look at the charts because I'm doing this literally Sunday early evening after the game. We've done our Locked On Steelers squad show. I've done a bunch of different things. So I haven't had a chance to like comb through the film and calculate exactly or look at charts yet. But I'd be very curious to see Aaron Rodgers, his deep passing numbers, and like how they played into this game and the efficiency of how he hit it in this game. Because when he hit it against the Ravens, I think it truly shocked the Ravens defense, and not just shocked in the, oh my gosh, they're doing it, but in a way that's like, crap, we made a whole game plan this week thinking we're going to take away all the underneath stuff in the run game. And now they're hitting us back here, and they've hit us with it more than once and now more than twice. We've got to adjust and take things and work on other things. And in doing so, I think that led to miscommunication, problems that they faced, and then the Steelers were able to get a lot more from their short passing game, like Jaylen Warren's basically walk-in 38-yard touchdown, which was just so bizarre. But I truly think it was because the Ravens were so focused on trying to take away quick passes and reads here and reads there, and it led to it led to them giving up the deep ball. And so when they had to account for the deep ball while also still trying to put in the checks that they had against the short passing game and the run game, I think that led to some mix-ups there. It also opened up the short passing game itself just to succeed. Kenneth Gainwell with a big third down conversion in the short passing game, and then some of the short passes that set them up to convert third down. The Darnell Washington completion where he got injured, but it was an important play to erase a long down and distance and led to the Steelers eventually converting on that next third down. I thought that was a big part of what happened in this game. And it was absolutely necessary because the Ravens clearly came out with a plan to stuff the Steelers' run. Nothing that the Steelers tried worked in the run game. Jaylen Warren, 8 carries for 13 yards. We got to have a talk about that because that is not good. And that's not just on the O-line. I think there's some stuff going on there. Kenneth Gainwell, 4 carries, 15 yards. Basically he averaged 3.8 yards per carry. So no run game, but Aaron Rodgers gets it done through the air. And DK Metcalf, what a game from that guy. And I think a big way he stepped up. But I also think part of it comes to, if you are the Steelers and you're looking at this, something Aaron Rodgers said before this on Wednesday, and I think we played the clip here. I should have uploaded it for this game, but I don't want to replay old stuff. But Aaron Rodgers brought this up when I was asking about it, and he was basically saying like, hey, when it comes to the deep ball, we need our receivers to run better routes. We need to get better releases. We need to have better timing and understand like the spacing and things. Arthur Smith brought up the same thing. And so what did they do to work with that to make that a factor this week? Roman Wilson gets a healthy scratch. Not a good sign for him. But Adam Thielen, been here since Tuesday. He starts in the game. Marquez Valdes-Scantling gets promoted from the practice squad. And it's those two with DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin. And even though those two older vets that have been brought to the team really didn't do anything statistically, I think that their presence on the field, also Ben Skoranek being part of this is too. I don't want to minimize him. He made a big third down catch, third down catch, but big first down conversion for 13 yards. But I think it is important to know, I think these guys ran their routes the ways that Aaron Rodgers has been looking for, that's allowed him to set up what he's trying to set up cerebrally downfield. Now, I can't prove all that yet because I don't have the all-22 and I watched it at home like you guys, so saw the broadcast angle. So I'll need to see that. But just the feel that I got when I was watching how the Ravens were reacting and trying to call things out on defense, I think this game plan was smart. I think it was a big gamble on if they could hit it, because here's the other thing about this, guys, is that like the Steelers could have made this plan, and if Aaron Rodgers just misses on those deep balls to DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin, they lose this game and it's over. But they got aggressive, they bet on him, and the thing that he hadn't been doing, that really neither him nor Mason Rudolph had been doing, was hitting those deep balls, and they did in this game. And now if you're the Steelers, you've opened up something for your offense. You put yourself in a position where people do need to fear DK Metcalf. He was still getting double teamed in this game, but they found ways to loosen it up, and they found ways to take advantage of those double teams. I think if the Steelers, they don't have to hit on it 4 or 5 times a game like they did in this one, but if they can just show each game that threat is there, it will open up the other things and allow them to play that balanced style of offense that they were designed to play, so that no weight is too heavy on one specific player. And that's what I think this offense was always supposed to be. We got to talk about the defense, though. They didn't have their best day, but they also didn't have their worst day. I don't think they really have a bad day. I think the Ravens came to play, but they showed the fight that this team needs if they're actually going to win this division. And it's a sign that this team is not giving up. They're not stale. They're not falling apart. They're locked in more than people realized.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more, and keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
How some overlooked dudes are changing the tune of the Warriors season, and why some dudes may be on the way out.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
Let's get into this thing stanza by stanza, and it was the Warriors stepping on the pedal early. Best ball movement I think I've seen all season long. They were zipping it around. I don't know if that's a byproduct of Pat Spencer being out there, someone that's extremely selfish, that doesn't pick up his dribble, that just continues to move and it flows. But that starting lineup that the Warriors threw out there with Spencer, with Hield, with Quentin Post, with Will Richard, and with Jimmy Butler was phenomenal. Will Richard's one of those guys that kind of just, you forget that he's on the floor for a minute, and then he knocks down a couple deep threes like he did late in the game, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. Will Richard, he's already gone for 30, and he barely does anything offensively, but he knows how to play. He does his role. 24 minutes, 9 points, 4 rebounds for Will Richard, a plus 36, but Will Richard's not the lead to this game. Like I just said, kind of an aftermath in the starting lineup. He's someone that comes in there and is some glue, does his job. But the dudes from this one that we're focusing on, Jimmy Butler, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Quentin Post, 19 points, 4 rebounds. Pat Spencer, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Guy Santos, 6 points, 7 rebounds in his 20 minutes. DeAnthony Melton looked good in his 17 minutes with 13 points. Brandon Pajemski had 21 points. And then Moses Moody in his 19 minutes had 11 points in the game. But Warriors were zipping it around. They were shooting well early and often. Far too often this season, the Warriors cannot hit baskets. It's a difference maker in this game. I'm not some prophet by telling you that making shots is a recipe to winning games. And that's what the Warriors did. They hit 22 of them today. Off 27 assists, they hit 22 deep balls of their 47 attempts, good for 47% in the contest. Post hit 5 of them. He was chucking them up all game. He was getting open look after open look. He's excellent in the pick and roll with Pat Spencer, but he hit 5 of them. Buddy Hield still has not been able to find his shot. There were 2 or 3 that I thought were going to lead to some runs, and he missed a bunch of them. He went 1 of 5 in the game. Warriors still have to figure that out with Buddy Hield. He's, I believe, around 30% from deep. He's at 31%, and shooting 20% today is going to lower that percentage below 30%. So Warriors need Buddy Hield to get back up closer to 40% if he's going to warrant 22 minutes with all these dudes that are emerging. And a lot of them provide size, which is a beautiful thing, because the Warriors got on the glass today against Chicago and dominated off the window, 51-38. They owned that statistic. I guess we got to start off before we go too deep into the Warriors by saying that the Bulls, they suck right now. They got off to a great start. They beat the Pistons their first game of the season. I think they raced out to like 6-2, 7-2, and they have hit a lull, and they have not reacted well to some of their early season's losses. They are not good. Vucevic was owned once again by Post. He only had 9 points on 4-13. Kobe White started hot, but only went for 12 in the game. Buzelis, one of their bright spots, crammed it on Quentin Post's head. You'll see that one on SportsCenter. He had 16. But aside from that, Giddey had 18, but I thought he struggled in the game, had 4 turnovers. You kept their bench in check, and you whooped them. You defended hard. You beat them by 32 points, and all of a sudden, a road trip that looked like it was going to be hell early. I mean, you were down 20 points, 30-10 after the first quarter against Philadelphia. And you had games coming up against Cleveland that I had penciled in as a loss, and then a game against Chicago that was going to be difficult in a different time zone. And you salvaged this road trip to go 2-1, and you found new dudes in the process that are playing good basketball. Forget about where you were picked. Forget about lottery. Forget about this guy makes $25 million. This guy makes $3 million. We are seeing a changing of the guard because the Warriors are playing good basketball right now. What do I say about the pudding? The proof is in it. The proof is in the fact that Quentin Post should be getting 30 minutes a night. Does anyone disagree with that statement? Like, he's good. Defensively, offensively, you don't have any other bigs. Start giving him some minutes. Trace Jackson-Davis got 22 minutes in the game today, which is fine in a game like this, but I'm starting to think you just give Post 30-plus minutes a game. He's a starter. Give him starters minutes. Give him starters minutes. And really, the Warriors started off 11-2. Bulls called a timeout, and this one was never really close until Chicago went on a late run to open up the fourth quarter, I believe it was, and cut it down to 11 is as close as they got, I believe. And then Jimmy Butler just took over and went off. But I want to get into some player spotlights on today's program, specifically starting with Pat Spencer. Dog. He's a dog. We've talked about this. Officer Pat, team first guy, did not take bad shots, did have a few, maybe not bad turnovers, but turnovers that you could tell were just because he can be a little bit overmatched out there. He's a smaller point guard. If he gets too deep into the teeth of the defense and picks up his dribble, does not have anywhere to go, that's an opportunity for someone to take it away from Pat, to block him, to steal it from him, whatever. He does best with that little float game, creating open looks for other teammates by driving and kicking, and then just, late in the shot clock, whatever, hanging out around the perimeter and knocking down some open threes, which he's done the last few games, but did not do that today. In fact, Pat Spencer did not shoot a single three. This man is an old school type of basketball player. There was one play, a couple that I want to highlight. One where he had a little turnaround on the block, a little Kevin Durant action from 6'2" Pat Spencer. I was like, okay, Pat, I see you. Then another play. Another play was when He pump fakes on a 3, catches it left wing, pump fakes, drives and kicks to Quentin Post. So he drives, kicks it over his right shoulder to Quentin Post, who's now on the left wing. Post misses a 3. And guess who is standing in the middle of the paint to grab the rebound and lay it up and in? The smallest guy on the floor, Pat Spencer. Pat Spencer is who I thought Brandon Pajimski was. I am sorry, Pat Spencer. I was unfamiliar with your game. And clearly Kolsky was. We'll see if he ever comes on the program again. I told him he needs to write a 3-page sonnet apology to Pat Spencer if he wants to be on the program ever again. And he'll say, but we just need him to continue this, because this is the issue with Warriors basketball over the last couple of seasons. There's no consistency. Like right now we can say, go with Pat, go with Guy, go with Post, go with the second round and the guys we thought were G League players. And let's stop with the Moody. Let's stop with the Kuminga getting all these minutes. But you know that'll change. It always does. That's what's so frustrating. But maybe, just maybe, we're starting to see a changing of the guard where it doesn't matter where you're picked. It doesn't matter your measurables. It doesn't matter, quote unquote, talent. It matters how the team looks when you're on the floor. And they looked pretty damn good against Cleveland. And they added in Jimmy Butler, who looked awesome in this game. And the team just looked outstanding. I mean, they drilled the Bulls at United Center. It was never even close. Big win for the Warriors. And not a great day for the people that say Steve Kerr can't develop any talent, or not even Steve Kerr, just the Warriors in general cannot develop any talent, because everyone always points to Moody and Kuminga, right? No, they can't develop talent. And Wiseman, they can't develop talent. Guess what? Quentin Post, take a look at him. He was a dude that started off last year in the G League. He's a second-round draft pick. They are developing that talent. Quentin Post is legitimately good. He's a good big. Metrics-wise, he's one of the better defensive bigs in the league right now. Will that stay that way? Maybe not. You can cook him a little bit on the perimeter. But, man, with no Draymond Green out there, the defense did not struggle at all today. They turned over the Bulls 15 times. Chicago shot at 36% from the floor, 11 of 40 from deep. Ugly basketball. Not a great night to be a Chicago Bulls fan, to say the least. 123-91, the final score. All right, I want to get into a couple things heading into the second block. Jimmy Butler in his fourth quarter. We'll get into that. Why Brandon Pajimski's role has changed, it seems, and why it will benefit the Warriors. He's not that dude. However, he can be a dude, and he showed today why, 29 minutes of pods? That's still a lot. But 13 shots, 5 of 9, working off the ball. Pat Spencer is your backup point guard, it would seem. Pajimski off the ball is the best Brandon Pajimski you're going to get. 21, 8, and 7 for pods in the game today.